Women Weekly Check-in. This is the check-in. This is where you stop and see how you're doing. How are I'm Yolanda at Dryer Buzz. I made it to the day. I'm gonna reach over there. Oh, reach over there. Angela, how you doing?
I'm I'm here. You see, I'm doing ohm fingers. I'm fully present
There you
after
go.
after making us late. So if anybody was looking for us to be and we're late, that's on me. So yeah, but no, I am well. All is
And that's,
well.
you know what? I ended a phone call yesterday to somebody, and I literally said, "Be well."
Mm-hmm.
And the receipt that got,
Mm-hmm.
how they received it, it was
Mm-hmm.
like I reached in. It was almost like a hug,
Yeah,
you know.
that's for
And
sure.
they stopped the hang up,
Yeah.
as if we do still hang up. They stopped the hang up and said,
Yeah.
thank you," because we need to be told, be
Yeah.
well, just be well, because a lot of us are hanging on decisions that need to be made, problems. In fact,
Mm-hmm.
while waiting for you, I was reading about a restaurant in Atlanta, Twisted Soul, was I think it's called,
Mm-hmm.
and actually, when reading, I was reading about the restaurant and how they were holding on. You know, the headline was kind of gloomy, but then I'm reading that they got a chance to take advantage of all these different grants. And then I get to the end of the article, and it's all that said that the article was even published thanks to a grant. You know, a Facebook grant on local news. We need to look up some of this stuff,
We
right?
do.
Yeah, it was, I mean, all throughout, and it was talking about all the things that this one restaurant has taken advantage of, and that they're still struggling.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they took, of course, all the national stuff, and then some regional stuff, but then even the article had a grant. And I was in a conversation with somebody the other day. So people don't underestimate the fact that there is not money out there. It does take who you know or who you can have to walk these things through for you. Angela is one of those people. Let me just tell y'all that. Angela is one of those people working with companies. So get in her inbox. And so you're probably well versed on this. And
Mm-hmm.
I know it's something that we need to look at as an opportunity too,
Mm-hmm.
especially now that Facebook, in fact, there are a lot of TikToks are being shared because TikTok has also set a creators budget trying to keep people on TikTok. So if you have
Mm-hmm.
10,000 followers, 10,000 views, and 10,000 this, that, and the other, I'm halfway there. Um, you can apply for these different grants. And you know what? Let's talk about this, Andrew, because you and
Mm-hmm.
I always talk about the level of shame applied to a lot of things, and it oftentimes will keep women and minorities out of the race, out of
Right.
competition because of the level of shame that is aimed at us and whether or not we take advantage of a thing. And then we keep wondering why there are so many gaps.
Mm-hmm.
I'm reading this one article about this restaurant, even though it said they were struggling, they've had more advantages than most
Right.
because simply, we're just talking about they filled out the forms. And
Right.
even if you can't, and like I have an adverse reaction to forms, put somebody on it because there's
Yeah.
so much opportunity out there right now. And I know a lot of people are hearing no's, they're facing walls, and rivers and lakes and gaps and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But you can really get to somebody that can help you get through this process. And for those of y'all watching in the future, we're still talking about the pandemic. So
Yes.
what do you? And I even said to somebody the other day, I said, there are a couple of conventions. In fact, no, there are hundreds of conventions and events and things that are not happening. And many of them operate with big budgets, small budgets. So
Mm-hmm.
what's happening with those budgets? Are these places now offering different grants? We're in a grant world, and I don't know
Yeah.
that we've been here before since the 90s. I
Yeah.
remember a lot of my work, and you and I having both had our share working with nonprofits. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of work in the 90s had to do with
Oh, yes.
grants and funding. You don't hear that a lot, the word
Mm-hmm.
funding. What do you think about that now that, especially now that we've got new president hopefully
Yeah.
coming? We're in the middle of an election. Is it that because I wonder too, if because we're in the middle of an election, are we seeing more information about, these grants and funding opportunities? What say you?
Oh yeah, I think absolutely. Especially anything that is connected to a government entity, right? It's like,
Mm-hmm.
hey,
Mm-hmm.
here's what we're doing for you, right? Whoops, I'm sorry, I keep bumping my table here. Let me study that. Yeah, and so because a lot of times just the creation of these grants has a political element to it, right? Is that people lobby for it, right? That you
Mm-hmm.
make a case for it. There's a constituency that you're trying to reach, and this can be with the company. Why Facebook and TikTok, and why are they providing these sort of these grants? What's going to help them stay in business because they're selling ads based on content, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But also it's good PR, right? In a difficult time, it's good PR to appear to be
Ooh.
reaching out, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so some of these grants may just have started out as PR opportunities for a government, for a politician, for an organization. But that doesn't mean that they're not good and legitimate and useful. And so this is exactly right. Anybody that has something to offer you that is going to influence the election or is going to perhaps inform your vote. Let's not say influence, let's say inform your vote. Certainly going to be hearing more about that. But also we're hearing more about it because this is just tough, tough times.
It is.
And I just I've posted this on Facebook. Anybody who follows me on Facebook, I've had shelter in place because of my situation as a caregiver, and I was getting to the point where I really was starting to have like mental health issues related to being afraid to go out. So
Mm-hmm.
like to the point that I talked to a therapist and a doctor, and I'm like, let me make sure that I'm not really getting messed up, right? So
Mm-hmm.
pretty easy prescription is that one day a week I just need to go out somewhere safe and
Mm-hmm.
walk around, right? So I've been trying to at least go and drive around, right, and see what's happening. And I just, as I drive through, like, so I went on Monday. I went to the Battery, to the Braves park, to the Braves
Mm-hmm.
Stadium, to the
Yeah.
park, right? Which I don't. I felt stupid. It took me 5 months to realize you can just go over there and walk around, and it's very open.
Mm-hmm.
Unless there's a game, because now they are playing games.
Right, but
There's nobody
they
there's
aren't
nobody in the
there are no
stadium, but
fans,
the
so yeah.
restaurants over there are open. So I'm assuming people are going into those restaurants and probably watching on television, because a
Mm-hmm.
lot of places were open, but several of the restaurants over there had closed. And they've only been open a few years, and just every time I look around, I think, is that business going to make it? Is this business going to make it?
Mm-hmm.
How's that business doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
What things that I'm like, people would have to come in and have a session, or just to take it. I'm near a little village called Vinings Village, and there's a little quaint downtown with boutique shops, and those shops they usually don't last more than 2 years anyway, right?
Mm.
There's a couple of stores in there, but a lot of them are just there'll be high-end handbags or shoes, or there's
Mm-hmm.
the stationery store. It's the thing that people used to do, and that you would go and you would browse and you'd buy gifts or whatever. And so those stores that type of retail had already been impacted. And I thought, if you've got a little knickknack store where people would just come, ladies who lunch, they would go have lunch, go do a little shopping, da da. I'm like, how do those stores survive? So, there's a need. There's such a need, and the PPP loans, the loans that were going out to small business, are just very limited, and many true small businesses, micro businesses, didn't qualify anyway. So, like I say, grants are a good opportunity, and some of these, it's if it's $1,000, I mean, it's
Mm-hmm.
worth it to try to apply. But to your point, it's a lot of forms, and you got to just
Yeah.
prepare yourself to fill out a million forms over
Mm-hmm.
and over and over again. It is a numbers game, and apply for everything. And even if you think you don't, even if you're like, I don't know if I qualify, apply, because you don't know, right?
And
Don't disqualify yourself.
the good
Let
thing in
them disqualify you.
applying is if you do get disqualified, at least you get notified of other
Yep.
things that are available. I'll show you guys on my screen. There we go. That's the article.
Mm-hmm.
And one of this, in fact, the publication is the Project Q, which is the LGBT publication. So
Mm-hmm.
they're also getting a grant to even do the story. I was getting ready to open up and trying to figure out how did we. I don't even remember how we shared this thing last time. Remember, I said I was trying to find the watch parties, and there it is. Okay, so we'll start one
Yeah.
there.
In fact, you see me. I'm leaning over here. I didn't log
Mhm.
on so that I could. I'm like I like to watch us. Um,
Yeah. So I try to start the watch party because, and if you guys are on the watch party link, try to come over to the original link so that we can see your comments. I also shared the link in the description up above. And I know I'm always over here on the edge of my thing because I heard that, hey, be 1/3. But anyway,
it's true. And I was just
um,
literally, Yolanda, I'm looking at you. I'm like, I need to be 1/3. I
I
guess I need to
know
be over here.
I'll go it that way, bring it over a little bit because I was
I'll
kind of out of the
Yeah,
shot.
I was like,
But
I'm mispositioned, and I was like, let's get lined up right.
yeah, so we can see you. I love you. I love your background. Of course, Oprah being in your background. But guys, there's a link in the description if you ever want to join us on screen. We are trying to reach out to people, leading women as well as a few leading men to come on with us. We changed the schedule. We did until November to the election. We are taking somewhat of a summer break. We're not going to leave you guys, but
Mm-hmm.
we, as Angela said, she needs to get out more. So we are taking time for family. This Sunday, I did go to my daughter's for dinner.
I
So
saw the
yeah,
pictures.
I she decided she was gonna cook and a really nice meal for us. So we got a chance to go over there and see everybody and just kind of hang out for a little bit. And I also went out running some errands. So I had a pretty busy Sunday. And you know, every time I do something, I have to spend the rest of the week trying to catch up
Yes,
because
yeah.
it when you do get out, it does kind of wear you out, right?
Yes, and in fact, this is one of the things that I realized just as you know, I've been in a long-term caregiver situation. And so anytime I go out, it's a big deal, right? I have to have someone
Mm-hmm.
come in and help. I have to, so I have to prepare not just myself to be gone, right? So like you're going to get ready to go out. I have to prepare, you know, for the whole caregiving setup. I have to make sure that the
Exactly.
setup is done, right? And so that's just work. And so what I realized as we got into about the first month of quarantine where I just wasn't going anywhere, I'm like, actually, it's easier for me to just stay home, right? Because I don't have to expend that energy that's necessary to go
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
And that was when I realized I'm going to have to watch very carefully. I'm going to have to watch myself very
Watch it.
carefully
Mm-hmm.
because
Mm-hmm.
it becomes very, very easy. And something that you and I had talked about as sort of the caregiver's nightmare is Grey Gardens, is the show, is the documentary Grey Gardens. And I tell you, I'm going to write an essay. I'm working on an essay because
Mm-hmm.
about Grey Gardens, and that I completely understand little Edie Beale. I understand her
Mm-hmm.
in such a different way now than I did when I first saw that piece. And I'm like, she
Mm-hmm.
was a caregiver and in a time with no cell phones, right? It was there. There was just no. It was the types of
No
technology
cable,
that
no
might have helped her,
internet.
right?
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
I guarantee you, it just got to the point where one, it was
Mm-hmm.
very hard for her
Mm-hmm.
mother to be left alone, right? Because you can tell as that documentary progresses, her mother has become basically confined to the bed. So she couldn't really leave her very long. Anywhere she had to go, she's, where she was at the time was sort of in
They
the
were
country.
both kind of enabling, like
Oh, they
I
had,
always kind
yeah,
of second guess the caregiving there.
yeah.
And like you think I think they both developed a fear of going out.
Oh,
Both,
they
you know.
absolutely did. They
Yeah.
both, and it fed each other. And
Mm-hmm.
there's a
Mm-hmm.
second documentary that was filmed prior to the Grey Gardens, right? And
Mm.
it was actually with Jackie Kennedy's
Yeah.
sister, Lee
Yeah.
Radziwill. And
Mm-hmm.
that was supposed to be the original documentary, which was going to be her coming in, swooping in to rescue her eccentric aunt,
Mm-hmm.
her eccentric aunts, right? Because it'll be her aunt
Yeah, the
and
aunt and
cousin,
then the mother. Yeah.
right? So
Mm-hmm.
the cousin, so Edie was her
Cousin.
cousin,
Okay.
Lily was her cousin, and
Mm-hmm.
it was in such bad shape, right? And actually the attention ended up focused on the Edies, and Lee Radziwill pulled out. She's like, nope, not doing it, not finishing it. So when you see that first one where they came in
Mm-hmm.
after just sort of this initial, their house was basically the original hoarder's house, and the community had treated them very poorly. They'd just come in with a fire hose and hosed out the first floor. So
Mm.
left it with water. It was moldy. It was just, they made it a million times worse. But you watch little Edie as they're going through ruined belongings, and she
Mm.
couldn't let go of anything. She had a hoarder. She was the hoarder, right? She had a hoarder sensibility, but because they had been rich and their money was gone, they were, and they had rich
Mm-hmm.
relatives who really didn't properly take care of them. But
Mm-hmm.
anyway, the where I look at this and I'm like, it got easier. I'm sure at some point it just became easier for her to quit trying to go out. The mother just got physically to where she couldn't go out, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure that just got to the point of what it took to get her mother out. I've been in that when
Yeah.
my where when people I was taking care of could go out. The work that it takes. So I'm saying a long story to say, if you are in a situation such as myself, right, where you are really stuck at home, maybe you have kids or you have someone sick that you're taking care of,
Mm-hmm.
you can start. You be careful if you start to slide into this thing that it really is just easier to never go anywhere, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Because it
now
does become easier
it is.
to
It's
just
just
never do a thing again.
no,
Yeah.
no, and
Yeah.
then you have to deal. Like I say, then you have to deal not say with the work, with the anxiety, with whatever. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's like I understand. I think about the old people in my family. My
Well,
my my
I think
grandparents
about
and
us.
who never left.
I think about
Good.
you and I because if it wasn't for our ability to connect in this forum, where would we be?
Oh my
I don't know
God.
that you and I would still be attempting a lot of things, and like you said, I think because we have something different than because anybody that's been in caregiving or the first thing you think about if you have seen that movie or either of
Yes.
those documentaries, it's your biggest fear
Yeah.
because it's just literally just a couple of decisions of things
Yep.
going an entirely different way. And I did open the watch party. So hello to Lamont and Reginald and Keith and Shantae and Herbert that are coming in. And you guys, there is an actual link where we're actually over here broadcasting. And so you have to kind of make a comment so that we can actually see that you're there. But I do have the watch party going in, and thank you for those of you that are watching. And we're just leading women check in, a lot going on, and just how we're processing it. And we just kind of come in. Angela and I like to go into the numbers of the game and the data
Mm-hmm.
and the science of everything. And we also have, and I'm really trying to get to this. I'm still just 3 hours. I swear, I feel like I've been listening to. You know what I need to do? I need to speed the book up. I'm still
You
listening.
yes, do one and
I
a half
got to
speed.
speed. Oh,
But
I gotta go. I'm at one
well,
and a half. I gotta go faster because,
well,
but it's so
yes,
much to process. You
it
can't go. You
is.
have to oh my God.
And I had to take a break this weekend. I took a break and went and listened to
Mm-hmm.
something that was fiction that was entirely unrelated
Okay.
because I was
Okay.
like, I need a palate cleanse. I finally got my hard copy. I should have the hard copy of the book. I finally got my hard copy of the
And we're
book,
talking
right?
about the book Cast,
Cast.
y'all. We're talking
Yeah.
about the book Cast,
But
which is
it
on Oprah's book club. But Angela scooped Oprah and had us start on this book. And it is the language, it is facts, it is oh my God, it's just everything.
so
Because
good.
I have been saying one of the things it's going to help me when people do read this book because they're going to be able to say, "Whoa, Dry Bus is not as crazy as we thought." Because I have been saying there's something in the mist, there's something in the water, there's something in the
Mm-hmm.
news, in
Mm-hmm.
the way and how all of this stuff is delivered to us. And this book is written by a journalist, New York. I was about to say New York Times, but I'm thinking about the
No,
1619.
she's also New York Times. She
She's
was
also New York
New
Times.
York Times.
Okay,
Yep.
okay. So,
Yes.
and one part that I love, and I'm gonna go back earlier in the book. I don't even know how far I am into the book, but when she talked about she was doing a story we were talking about a business earlier that's trying to thrive through this. Remember, she talked about interviewing the businesses, and the one
Mm-hmm.
guy, she showed up and she told him that she was from the New York Times. And he's like, "No, you can't be from the New York Times. I'm waiting on a New York Times reporter to
Mm-hmm.
come and interview," and he didn't get a chance to be interviewed because he this is the part that made me mad, that she even went so far as to prove who she was. I'm
Yes.
like,
Yeah.
I think the fact that I'm here waiting for you and saying that from the New York Times should have been enough. And see, me, this is again why I say
Yes.
I'm not running for vice president, and I'm not I'm not Kamala Harris, because I would have been like, okay, you just want to be included in this, because I would have
Right.
turned on my heels well before she did. And that's why, and I'm so mad at myself right now. Angel, I'm not beating myself up, but I have learned that that might be a flaw to a degree. You know, not willing to handle the conflict a little bit better than I
Yeah.
do, right?
Mhm.
Because when she said that, she even went so far as to show him her business card, then her ID, and I'm
Right.
like, it was too much because
Well,
I needed her to realize sooner. This is
yeah.
me. I needed her to realize sooner that there was nothing she could do, and it was only going to benefit him if she went through these hoops to prove herself in order to provide a benefit to him. So I'm so glad that she excluded him from the article, that
Well,
she was writing on these area businesses. But I still felt like, and even some of these people today, I still feel like we're, as women and as in minorities and all, I still feel like we're doing too much,
well,
you
and
know?
I think that that was part of the reason of her sharing that story, is that she knew, you know, in retrospect, she's like, I was doing too much, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And saying, but she was so taken aback by the whole thing, in part, right?
How though?
And
But
but you would
how?
think, you know, but again, there's a
Mm-hmm.
certain respectability that comes with the New York Times. You've talked to this person. I think she still was a little bit like, she still was having, she even said, she said she was still having a hard time of what, said, well, why would he not recognize who I am? Then she figured out, I mean, it was like a two beats in. She's like, oh, says he's not expecting a black woman to be from the New York
Mm-hmm.
Times.
Mm-hmm.
And I do sort of wonder if part of it was that she just wanted to see, well, how far will this man go, right?
How far would he
Because
go? Right.
I mean, to me, it was the, I mean, I'm so sorry this happened to her, but it was such a perfect illustration, is that she had spoken to this business owner on, or manager of a high end
Mm-hmm.
line of
Mm-hmm.
shop in Chicago. She'd spoken to him on the phone. He knew her name. They had an
Mm-hmm.
appointed time to meet, right? She's there. She introduces herself by the name, that, you know, by her name, Isabel Wilkerson, New York Times, exactly the same thing that was said on the phone. And no matter what she did from that point forward, he would not believe that she was her. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like what would have been her? What's the? Why would she be faking like she was? How would she even
Somebody
know
else. Yeah.
who was supposed to meet him?
Yeah.
So the talk about blinders, someone who is completely blind to a thing. And I think about this often, right? I think about this concept often, is that we can get a blind spot, and that something is right in our face and we don't see it. And
Mm-hmm.
I want to always be checking myself for that kind of thing that is just so obvious that I can't see it. I'm like, this guy was what was the breathing illustration of this, that, you know, it's like, well, what, you know, yeah, who are you?
Yeah.
What are you? It's like,
Yeah.
where's your ID? And so she shows her license, but said, well, where's your
Mm-hmm.
business card? And she didn't have any
Mm-hmm.
cards. She'd run out of cards. And he said, you mean you don't have anything with the New York Times written on it?
Right.
Like,
Right.
her own name on her driver's license was not enough. And he's like,
Mm-hmm.
well, then you need to get out of here because I'm waiting for the person from the New York Times. And I'm like, that is a blindness, like you
Mm-hmm.
say, that
And the hostility,
and the
that
hostility
came,
of it.
that came
And I
across with it.
appreciate,
Yeah.
then when she got her article written, she
I
sent him
like
a
that part
clipping
too.
with her business card and was like, I hope you
Yeah.
enjoyed my article. But, you know, I would have been far more petty. I would have been far, far, far more petty in my response, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I probably would have brought that article in.
Like
And
like the what's the one with the movie Pretty Woman, when she comes back, you work
yes,
on commission, right?
yes,
It was
exactly.
one of those moments.
She
Yeah.
needed,
So I
I
did
would have
I
loved for her
like
to
that she
have,
followed
I
up
would have
with
loved for her
him.
to have that moment. But, you know, she was like, I'm not, you know, wash my hands of it. And it's interesting, in the book, she does not say the name of the retailer. And she's like,
And she
it
said,
was a
I'm not
prominent,
going to.
she's
Yeah.
a prominent brand. And she said, I'm not going to, because I was like, tell me who. But she was like, because she said, and I thought this was also interesting. We
Mm-hmm.
want to say it's that employee or that manager at that brand, and they have a problem. And
Mm-hmm.
rather than saying it's a general problem, right? That could
Mm-hmm.
have been
Mm-hmm.
any person at any store, at any company. And she said, and I thought that was also very insightful on her part. She said, this is not about saying, you know, Chanel is, you know, has discriminatory practices. It could be anybody, as we talked about Hermes and
Mm-hmm.
Oprah,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Right.
And it's like,
Right.
So it could be any company with anybody who is in
The
charge.
fact is, this is something that exists. It existed. It sounded almost like it was generational. Here was
Yes,
somebody,
sounded like
an
probably
older
old.
icon in the older
Yeah.
regime of
Yep.
retail,
Yep.
high end retail. So, and a lot of that, not to excuse the fact that
No.
here was an opportunity, and I think everybody is kind of facing that right now. It's realizing, some of these walls are coming down legitimately, genuinely, organically, and then there are those that are trying to hold it up. So I'm going to speed it up today because I was a little disappointed in myself when I turned it back on this morning, and it still said I had 10 hours left, and I'm like, but I've learned so much already.
It's true, and it's like it's true. It's like you gotta stop and chew your food, right, and digest it. But I will say that's a good warning to anybody who's like starting this book. You feel like it takes forever, and like I really said, okay, I'm not going to flinch from it because I'm a person,
and it's not that you want to, because you're all in. It's good stuff. It's really good stuff.
But I
it's
was
just
like,
it's just packed.
I'm a person, and you and I, this is one of the things when you were doing the book club, one of the things I appreciate about you is that you'd pick a book and you'd be like, I'm gonna flip through it and let's find what's relevant, right?
Right.
And I'm very much that way. I mean, I like to read a book cover to cover, but usually my first read, I skim a book, I'm looking through it, particularly informationally, right? And I'm going to read sections. I read them out of order. Like you said, it's sort of like you're reading a blog, right? I'm reading sections. Right. And with this one, I said, I really want to be committed to sticking with it and let her prove her point, right? She's got it set to points, but I was like I say, I just got my hardcover book because it sold out instantly, being an Oprah book. So because I've been on the audio, I have not had a chance. I couldn't skip ahead, really, right? I mean, I could have, but I was like, okay. So now that I got the book, now I have to resist, because I think I may be halfway. I may have 5 hours left.
Oh my God. I did get through the part where she made the comparisons of the Holocaust.
Yes.
And
well, it's so bad. It's so horrible. It's so horrifying.
It's horrifying, but I like the part, and there's so many things. People. There's so many normal things around us that have come through the struggle of so many people that we don't know. Like, say, for instance, when she talked about the post office and the postcard, and what's going on with the post office now. And there's so much I remember my generation having to listen to the previous generations, and things that we would come home and that would trigger my grandparents,
Yeah.
We went in on Oprah and Gail recently. I think because Gail said, when this thing come out, like a lot of people are now calling themselves auntie.
Right.
And a lot of the celebs and so forth, everybody wants to go into the auntie thing because, it's a loving thing, right? But I got to thinking, I said, I bet you Gail probably was triggered by the auntie, whereas the woman who was pretty much, she was the one who could keep the other slaves in line.
Well,
and was designated auntie.
Well,
anything to keep from calling Black people by their name.
Yeah. So you've read that section about what's his name, Hale, Mr. Hale, who named his daughter Miss.
Yeah. Well, not only Mr. Hale, but Dick Gregory. Did that as well.
Yeah.
So, and that's I didn't even catch that part. I thought you were talking about Dick Gregory, but
no,
a number of them.
There's
so I got to that part. But I
thought that was, to your point, that was a really good reminder that. And even then with auntie, right? That white people use that for like an older Black woman. So, you could be called, a Black woman might be called girl, right? Or auntie if they were older, right?
And that's probably what Gail was responding to.
They might be called by their first name, right? But they're never going to be given the honorific. And I thought the same thing. I'm like, yes, I'm sure this is triggering in this whole auntie. And it's like, who gets to call you now. Auntie? Right.
It's everywhere now. Yeah. And I guarantee you, those that are now embracing it, because Snoop Dogg has this thing about calling everybody nephew. Right. So and there's this whole reclaiming of everything But I often say, before we reclaim it or want to own it, at least know what it had to do with. And man, that just that hit me
Yep.
differently now,
Yep.
because like I said, a lot of people are using it in their branding, especially on some of the social media. They put it in their social media name, so we're using it. But I don't think anybody I don't think anybody knows, because we also have to think about, the whole thing with the North and the South, people
Mm-hmm.
trying to escape things. And so that's why they wanted to reown all this stuff. But even just again, the post office and the postcard, I just think that has had to be horrific.
Well,
The
and I'm
images of lynching
just in them,
is on the
just open
postcard, just on
in
a
the
postcard.
on
Like
a card.
I'm gonna send this. People would take these pictures and that just had to be. And when you think about the fact now that everything has to go in an envelope, it went in
Mm-hmm.
an envelope because it was so insensitive, right?
Well, it wasn't
This
supposed to be sent, and this is this, and so not only was it insensitive, but it was supposed to be illegal to send those pictures, and so white people just stuck them in an envelope, and it's like,
envelope.
and it's like, wow, okay, so well, fine,
Whew, that
and that
that's
was
that
very,
that's hard. That's hard to deal with. And then again, tying to the fact that what happened with Jews happened because they were learning hatred from America, you
yeah,
know.
yeah,
So and I just remember growing up and you were trying to figure out what was going on. Wait, like trying to get the full story. And
mm-hmm,
there was always something suppressing the full story, and you
mm-hmm,
could only get it because if somebody was passing it down, or if you got it. I mean, as a kid, like overhearing these things. That's why people always say from the overheard, because
yeah,
it was never you could never really get access to the books and things. I remember when the internet first started. I mean, man, you could research all kind of stuff. Today, you half the stuff that's out here now is nothing like was first available.
it's
Uh,
true,
as far as researching on the internet, it's all watered down. And I remember going to see Pearl Click, um, and a couple other people. It was a theater group. The one of the theater conventions used to come to Atlanta every year. And this was like all the major auditions, all the major panels and things like that. And they were talking about going back to all these different scripts and changing the word Negro and just in all the language. And so there was this panel that was talking about, listen, on stage, this is the last place that we get true, authentic
mm-hmm,
storytelling. And sorry, you're just gonna have to bear with it and bear through it. Now, as somebody as an avid theater goer, yeah, I have to when you tell me something that happened in slavery, it happened to an African American, I get lost because I'm
yeah,
like, no, because African American was a term that some people made up to get away from the other terms. I need to hear it because I know that that's in the time span, and
right,
I can respect that. But it's just I know we want to be sensitive to some things, and I know we're at a point where of all the atrocities that happen on American soil and other soils and other lands, people are trying to be sensitive to it. But there's a way to understand keeping it in its original language so that we do get the gravity of it. I think
mm-hmm,
changing the language of it, like right now, I get the gravity of a lot of this stuff, even though it's been a lot of this has largely been part of my life. We have generations we know went through these things. So it's there. The respectability is there. But changing up the language, that means that someone in the future is not going to understand it, which is why these kids today don't understand when you say to be mindful of this and to be mindful of that, because the language now, every word that used to mean something bad now means something good,
mm-hmm,
you know.
yes, well,
So it loses its gravity on
and
that.
it's certainly okay to reclaim language. Most disenfranchised groups do that, right? But
Mhm.
to historically preserve where it came from. And I think about, I never had a chance to go to the museum in Alabama. What is it? It's the I want to call it the lynching museum, but that's not what it's called. The
That's,
museum for,
it's what it is, but that's
yeah,
not what they would
no,
call
they
it. And
want to
I'm
call it,
trying to remember. peace and justice.
Justice and peace, right?
Justice, yeah.
And
That
so
never
it
came.
so I got to have my guided tour from a dryer buzz on live. So when Yolanda, when you went, you know, you got to take me all through it, and I was like,
I
this
have
is
to
like
go again. I have to go again. It's
but
it's amazing to
I
walk through.
absolutely, that's as soon as I'm able to go places, this is one of the places I want to go. And it made me think about being in Europe and touring. I had a chance to tour a concentration camp, the Dachau concentration
Mm-hmm.
camp in outside of Vienna in Austria. And they do not flinch at what
Mm-hmm.
happened there. And
My
there
son, I
is,
think my son went there. He
yeah,
posted. You have to go check his timeline. He
I go
posted
look.
recently some pictures.
And
And the book. He posted this
mhm,
book with the names in it,
yep.
and it's
And
not. It's a room long. This
yep.
one book with these names, and you have to go check it out.
And you go through and they talk about every horrible thing. There's photographs, you know,
Mm-hmm.
it's all there. Now it's not done sensationally, right? But it's there. And then you can tour the grounds, you know, and everything is pristine and it feels like you're in a very sacred space, right? Like you are touring a scene of mass murder, right? And I've
Mm-hmm.
got when you were going through the museum there, with the hanging pillars and the names, and it
Mm-hmm.
felt very sacred. It felt, you look up, it felt like you know, almost church like, right? And
Oh my
then
God!
that
When you come down the street, it's
yeah.
like you're driving through a neighborhood,
Mm-hmm.
and all of a sudden you come around the corner, and
Mm-hmm.
just with just a little bit of incline on the hill
Mm-hmm.
is that you saw in the picture. So it comes out of nowhere when you
Yeah.
get there. So,
And so memorials, right? And this is sort of the truth and reconciliation model, right? Where
mm-hmm,
everything is admitted, everything is told, everything is recorded, right?
mm-hmm,
And then memorials are created, and then reparations are made, right? So
mm-hmm,
restitution is made, right? And so this is the model that helps cultures overcome this kind of psychic wound, right? And we've got pieces of it, right?
mm-hmm,
But you know, but again, we have the Holocaust Museum, we have the Civil Rights Museum here, but we have there's a Civil Rights Museum attached to there in Birmingham. I know that there's a companion museum to the
mm-hmm,
Justice and Peace Museum, and where there's pictures and stories and so forth.
mm-hmm,
And it's like we have to have that. I'm gonna quote. I'm gonna use your line. Our forever FLOTUS, Michelle Obama, who's like,
mm-hmm.
we've got to tell the hard truth. We've got to be honest and tell the truth, and make sure everyone understands the truth of it, right? And then we can decide what do we reclaim, what do we honor, what do we memorialize. But until we have a way for
Right.
every generation to know the truth of what happened,
And
right?
that's been the problem here in
And
America
we're not
is
even close. Yeah.
we can't even get to the truth. You
Yep.
know, it's so much suppression. There's so much suppression of it. It's like, hey, listen, let's all say what it is. And so, like but you used the word overcome. We're not allowed to overcome it. We've been told
Mm-hmm.
just get over it.
Get over
You
it.
know,
That's it.
like,
Oh,
get over it. Overcome it and get over it.
yeah.
It's two different things. Get
Yeah.
over it, meaning nobody wants to take responsibility for it. Nobody wants to atone for it. Let's just act like it didn't happen. And that's been America's way of dealing with this.
Yep.
Let's just continue to act like, let's try to get as far away from it as we can. And we're going to act like it didn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
But when you act like it didn't happen, nobody heals from it. And so it keeps coming up and it keeps coming up. And we should be, we could be further away from this if people would just admit the fact. I mean, they're still talking about it. They don't know if any of this stuff really happened. You know, we are at a point talking about video, you know, and even in the argument of reparations, I'm like, but we do have generations out. We do have video. There is, even if you don't want to say photo, if you don't want to go by the memory of people, there's now enough video. There's video available of these things and so forth, you know, and then there's just a way that in this country will have to atone for it. And it's going to take a little bit more than, you know, painting Black Lives Matter down a number of streets and having, you know, people face it or many people going out and protesting and so forth. And just even understanding that nothing in this country, absolutely nothing in this country came about without protest. There has not been a generation so generous in America that
Mm-hmm.
something was developed for a people in the future without protest. It just has
Yep.
not happened.
Yep.
And
Yep.
until we, I don't know if it's an elected body, and I don't think it's going to be an elected body.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to come from an elected body because I'm so tired of politicians telling me to vote for them again when they're already elected and should be doing things. So I'm so
Well,
tired, exhausted with politicians. But I
and this
think
was
it's
one of,
got to come from somewhere else. We
yeah,
got to figure out what that is. Go ahead.
and this is one of my sort of complaints about the Democratic National Convention, which I'm like, I'm not going to watch all of it, and then I end up watching all of it. So it's like,
What
um,
have you seen? Because I slept through it all each night.
yeah, I'm basically catching the second half. Just my schedule, I end up catching the second half, so I end up watching like the keynotes at the end and
Okay.
so forth, and then I go back and rewatch the live stream. I'm not watching it on any channel because I don't want anybody's
I didn't realize
input.
it was on television until
Yeah,
last night. I think I caught
yeah,
some
yeah.
wrap up, and I was
But
like, "Wait, it's on TV."
yeah, but I got to see,
It
of
was on
course, Michelle.
CBS, right?
Yeah, they're showing. I don't know if they're alternating channels. Like I say, I'm not even
Okay.
paying attention to it. I know certain cable channels are
Mhm.
streaming the whole thing on a specific channel, a cable channel. Like you could, like if you have Comcast, it's channel 201 or something.
Okay.
I'm
Well,
just
let's get
going,
to your Michelle Obama.
yeah. So I
First
got to
thing you
see,
asked me about was the
yeah, the
vote
vote
next.
necklace. And so of course she's the shining star of the party. I mean, she is, full stop, and will be the
I
and
gotta
as
ask you though. Wait. Let me ask you this, because we got a chance to see this Michelle Obama. I
yep.
won't say up close and personal, but we got a chance to experience this Michelle Obama. Put it that way. She was very matter of factly the fearless woman that we got a chance to. We would
Mm-hmm.
not be a podcast team if not
Mm-hmm.
for Michelle Obama, or a broadcast team if not for Michelle Obama. So how do you think America? I saw the replay. How do you think America dealt with that?
Oh, people loved it. And it's so interesting to me that prior to the convention, I've just been doing a little, random survey of people that I work with, people that,
Mhm,
in the neighborhood. You're going to watch a convention, going to watch the convention.
mhm.
And it's interesting how many men have said to me, I don't know if I'm going to watch it, but I'm going to watch Michelle Obama, right? And I was like, interesting. Interesting.
Men,
These would be Democratic voting men for the most part, right?
okay.
In my that I'm aware of. I have not I don't know that many Republicans, period, but there's a couple of Republican neighbors. They didn't say they were going to watch Michelle Obama, but they were like, yeah, I want to watch Michelle Obama. And I'm like, well, that's good. And I said, she has become such an influencer. I said, I think that she, we used to think of our friend Oprah as the influencer of women, and I said,
Yeah.
I think it's become Michelle Obama. And one of these guys said to me, he says, I think she's an influencer for more, for a lot of people, male and female, that what she has to say, people want to pay attention to. So I thought that was very interesting. And the initial feedback from Democrats and from, I'm going to say, from moderates, I don't know, it was very positive and was well received. And they were like, do it, say it, tell the truth,
Mhm,
Michelle,
mhm.
right? Like say this thing when she said, I'm going to tell you the hard truth of it. People loved it, right? And we
Mhm.
were back to this thing, when are you going to run? But the far right, of course, is going to tear her up and continue to attack her. And the only thing they can come up to attack her with is her physical appearance. And she looks gorgeous. So I don't even
Do you
know what
think
that's
she
about.
could, if she was to get in politics, if not on a national level, do you think she could
She's
probably do something on a local level? I mean,
she,
I
she
don't know. It's
I don't
just,
even know how would she function on your school board. I mean, it's
I
like,
mean,
how would
not even
she,
on the school board, but like,
like, what would
what
she be,
about
a
a
mayor?
mayor? I
Yeah.
mean, I would think a mayor. Or, I mean,
I just,
I just can't see her not doing anything because when you listen to her, of course, Michelle Obama has a
mm-hmm.
podcast now. I mean, she there has to be something
Well,
that
I
will
think,
probably one day make her decide that pulls her in, and I don't know
well, and I
what that
think that
would
she,
be.
I think she can be very powerful as an activist in like what they call non-governmental organizations. Running, foundations and nonprofits.
Well, let's talk about that because one of the things we have not seen is we've seen them get into a little bit of what their legacy will be,
Mm-hmm.
but as a full on organization,
Mm-hmm.
and I guess because of the pandemic, pandemic. So I wonder what kind of a strong role, because she was talking with Barack Obama. If you guys missed that episode, her first episode was an interview with her husband, former President Barack Obama. And they just the crosstalk kind of conversations. They have very in-depth conversations. I wonder when whatever the building will be or whatever the organization will fully be. I wonder how much of a role she will have in that.
I imagine her doing something like Jimmy Carter. I imagine her being the Jimmy Carter of that couple, right?
You think?
I think that, and I mean, Rosalind was absolutely involved. I don't want to suggest that, right?
Right.
But I can imagine that she and Barack would do separate, that even through their
Have
foundation, their
separate
Obama Foundation,
initiatives.
would have
Mhm.
separate initiatives. But I imagine her doing something like Jimmy Carter with a life-changing global mission. Like when he went after guinea worm, you're like, when he announced he was going to do that, you're like, guinea worm,
Right.
but this was something he said, I want to pick something that could be eradicated in my lifetime that would improve the quality of life. And for those who lived in places where there was guinea worm, and I just happened to know about that prior to it,
Yeah.
this was horrible. It's horrific. Like I had a little kid, I had nightmares about getting a guinea worm, right? Because I'd learned about that.
Because we were that generation, we were that generation hooked on sugars and all this other kind of stuff. So we already had to deal with. We grew up having the worms,
Right.
Was,
so then it's like, oh my god, this thing burrows into your skin.
Young people today know
they don't
nothing about what medicine
know.
was like in our time.
Yeah,
okay.
But I can imagine that she would take on a challenge and would spend the rest of her life sort of in that lane, right? And which I think is probably going to be related to girls and education, because that really seems like
education.
it's the thing that she just really really fills her heart.
And for her to outright say she hates politics.
And I know she does, but then to play the role that she's playing now of an elder statesperson, right? Even though she's young, but to come in as the outside person, I thought, why can she speak with such moral authority? She has really the conscience of the country to me. She's not just the conscience of the party. She's the conscience of this country, right?
And the most interesting part about it was she did not get the backlash that people were expecting, especially with her speaking so matter-of-factly.
And looking right and with her looking right in the camera, this virtual format,
something we wanted for how long,
was exactly right for her, because it's the same thing.
That's why I like this pandemic, because think about if they were actually having the convention, it would be so. What I love about the fact that so much is virtual right now is because it's time for them to speak to a generation for whom they've had nothing but screens, right? Yep. And think about the access to a thing because everybody's having to bring it to a screen. The convention is available to anybody at any time. It's not on just at a particular time. We all have access to it. They're not able to speak just to the elitists or this, person involved at a certain amount into the party, only the political people. They are able, because of this whole virtual world that we are in. I think of our young people who have had nothing but screen time, nothing but screen life. And that's how they're going to speak to them. If Joe Biden wins, it's going to be because of screen time. And I think they need more. I think they need to think. Well, I guess after this, I'm pretty sure things are going to amp up. Yeah, we do still have, a couple more months. I think they silenced Trump a little bit. I mean, there were a couple of ads running, but I think they put a dent.
It was very hard. I mean, they tried to come after what Michelle had to say, but there's not a whole lot you could fight her on, because she was just telling the truth. But it's her ability to make you feel like she is talking just to you. That was the experience with the audiobook, You felt like she was just sitting in the room talking to you,
Mm-hmm.
right? When you're watching her talk to Gail, you know, we're in the big stadium tour. It still felt very intimate and personal. So when she's
Mm-hmm.
looking in that camera and she's saying, and you could feel it, you could feel the emotion, you could see her face, you could hear her voice crack, and she's like, you know, she's like, I hate this. I hate having
Well,
to do this.
even at the event with Gail, you almost felt like she felt like Gail was disconnecting her
Mm-hmm.
from the people, right?
Right.
Because so many times because they had the seats where she and Gail were kind of facing, and
Mm-hmm.
how many times she
And
turned to the audience
to the
and was like,
audience.
"Wait a minute,"
Yeah.
because she really wanted to talk to and relate. She really wanted to get back to
Absolutely.
people
And when
because she
she's
had to be
yeah.
so disconnected as first lady.
And when she said, I've met so many of you and I know you and you know, but she said, and you know me. And I was like, right there to make her president.
If
However,
you want to hear how Angela reacted, I do have a number of videos on YouTube of us at the Michelle Obama tour, and you can hear Angela was in the Amen
I acted,
corner.
I acted like I was in church. I was just like, yes.
Oh, I'm telling you,
Oh, I'm terrible.
it was something
I'm terrible.
I'll never ever forget. Never ever forget. It was
Nope.
amazing, absolutely amazing.
You want
All right.
I was gonna say you want me to be in an audience, you want me in your church crowd, and you want me at your funeral because I am just
You
like
had an amazing time.
I'm
I'm
just
telling you.
like there.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
but let's talk real fast about the vote necklace. You know, at this
Okay.
point, probably anybody who's seeing this has heard a little bit about that. That the most Googled search terms during her speech was where do I get Michelle Obama's vote necklace, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I just thought again the power of her as an influencer. Yet she's not. She could be using that in a much different way, and she's not. And that again comes back to where the moral authority is, right? Is that because you know that she's not trying to run for office, she's not trying to get over on you. She can
Right.
speak completely with authority. And it's back to the early days of Oprah when Oprah would do her favorite things and there was no money back to Oprah, right? There
Mm-hmm.
was no sponsorships or affiliates or whatever, right? And she said, I want people to just feel like that. So I don't want them to feel like I'm recommending something because I get paid, right? Well,
Mm-hmm.
over the years, since the end of the show, now if you get O Magazine, all of the favorite things have affiliate links and you get discounts if you buy it. And I'm sure that
Mm-hmm.
there's money back into the organization. And I don't fault that. I have no problem with that. But
Mm-mm.
but Oprah was like, I want to be able to have a certain authority, certain moral authority in what I'm recommending. Michelle Obama has that across the board, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when she wears that vote necklace, I do as my concern. So this was a little, you know, with the letters. It's a
Right.
spaced letter in gold, and they're
Mm-hmm.
handmade by it's a black woman. So it's a woman-owned company, black woman-owned company, and she hand does these. And you know you can request you say what letters you want, right? So I don't know
Mm-hmm.
who came up with vote. If Michelle requested that, someone gave it to her.
Well, she
Um,
has a very strong initiative out there for it.
and
So
and I was like, you know, I thought I really hope that this woman with, you know, they're like 300 and some dollars, I think, per necklace. So I hope she had
mm-hmm.
some sort of plan in place, to fulfill orders. I hope they told her Michelle's going to wear your piece, and I also hope she had some sort of plan in place to come up with a cheaper version. Because if she was
Mm-hmm.
selling those things for $50, everybody'd be
Yeah.
walking around.
Yeah.
Half
Because
the women in the
the
country
one
would
for
have a vote
50
necklace.
is just the word together, but the ones
Mm-hmm.
with the letters that, and luckily for anybody that had a product that has any boat product out there, because people were Googling boat necklace
Mm-hmm.
and the way the search engine, thank God, the way the search engine is right now, if you click on images and if the image is related to a product, it is now connected to that product and you can buy it right there from Google as opposed to having to go off into the websites. The one Michelle Obama did have on, the one that looked like it was $295. The other,
Yeah.
there were several other different variations, all the way
Yeah.
down to $50. And I'm pretty sure all the resin people on TikTok are making boat necklaces. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
everybody needs to have something out there.
Well,
Maybe we need to we've
we
been
need to
trying to
have
come
our
up with our,
leading women
we
vote.
need
You
to say
know,
leading women vote or something.
yes,
So,
but you
and
know,
like I
yeah,
said, I've been up since 5 o'clock this morning working on adding some features on the store, and I'm telling you, and I hadn't done I hadn't done website stuff in a very long time. So I was praying for all of my brain cells to please come back and working on this store. And just and guys, think about it. And one concern I had, of course, with this post office, and one good thing is that I don't know who finally got a hold of whatever's going on at the post office, but they said, oh, there were some things they were trying that were slowing down. He's like, you know exactly what you were doing. So they're going to call off all of this. Mail is going to go back to normal. And I was talking to my daughter about it yesterday, and I said, I would love to think that I would like not to think that it had to do with the election. I said, but I think it's bigger than the election. I think it has to do with shipping. I'm just really keeping an eye on a couple of these people that have a monopoly and that are magnets in this thing. Logistics. If we are going forward into a virtual life, meaning delivery is going to, it's going to be the new forever thing, and it should be.
Yes.
Logistics plays a major part in that, and the post office is the cheaper of everything right now. So it's not just about those little envelopes, those election ballots.
This is an interesting thought. You always give me interesting thoughts. You see, this is my thinking. These are my two thinkings.
Think about it, and I got to thinking about small businesses, because small businesses like myself are always approached to put our products on Amazon. And conspiracy wise, right when the pandemic happened, one lone reporter in the press, what do you call it? Press thing, the conference they do each day from the White House, said, said Jeff Bezos has been meeting at the White House, or in contact with the White House almost daily. What's going on with that? To which Trump replied, I heard about that, meaning he wasn't necessarily the one that Bezos was talking about. So I've been keeping my eye on that. And because my real life auntie, rest her soul, was always afraid Amazon was going to take over. So she always made us make sure you buy local, Well, don't trust everything to Amazon. So I'm just really worried about companies. I know, because UPS even though, everybody seems to be doing good now in this pandemic, and of course we got the holidays coming up, but I think these companies are a little bit worried, because all of them are in a position where something could start up tomorrow and own all of this, right? Something with somebody with just a simple idea, Luckily for me, like I need, you and I both ordering stuff like crazy just for our normal. Like I want to have pizza tonight, and I'm like, man, if I can't decide between pizza and enchiladas. I need some red sauce, but I ordered it through the Amazon Fresh because I had an order coming yesterday, and I happened to look on there, and there was a delivery window for today, and I got all excited, because I'm like, I love the pricing. But if I didn't get a chance to get it delivered today, it's supposed to be at 5. I would have ordered it through one of the local ones. So there's a lot of stiff competition right now. People are comparing what's available, and people are really using these services. And this is going to be around a while. If you remember, we started in this pandemic. What did they say? They were looking for this to be cleared up by April, and then it went from April, and they've been 9 more weeks and 9 more weeks and 9 more weeks until here we are, and we're headed into September. It's the middle of August. We're going to be headed into September, and it doesn't look like anything is changing.
And it won't. And this is one of the earliest realizations back in March, is I'm like, oh my God, if we didn't shut down right away, we're not, and even with a vaccine, they don't know, we won't know for a while how effective it is. And so we will still have to maintain a lot of these protocols. And, I said to my sister this morning, I said, well, we have the dishonor of living in the worst state, in the worst country, in the worst pandemic in 100 years. And so, I'm like, here we are. And
we've been here before.
And state of Georgia is like, we're number one in dumbassery. And, and even, the White House, not President Trump himself, because he's not involved in any of that, but the White House task force is telling the governor of Georgia, who stole the election from Stacey Abrams, said, you've got to get this locked down. And, so you got to go back to closing the gyms and the bars. And and it's like he's like, oh, the left wing media. I was like, that's the White House is telling you you need mask
The
mandates,
hard part to
and it's
closing
like,
down.
yeah,
The hard part to closing down is when we say that we have to close down, it's simply because people are still not willing to take responsibility. And that means that if you're going into a workplace, you can't go do all this other stuff. If you are sending your kids to school, y'all can't go do all this other stuff. You need to be traceable. You need to be able to trace where you've been and what you're doing and how many people you've been around. Like I had to run out to the store yesterday. I could say, okay, I've only been home and I went to the store and I went to dinner with family X amount of days ago.
right.
It's just that limited. But if I went to the store and the person, who put in their PIN number or whatever before me has been all over the world, up the wazoo, I've been all over the world and up the wazoo.
Exactly.
I'm just hanging out at home, and I can't protect myself again until I get back home. And it's even, and I'm keep trying to figure out, like, how is it that they are even making us comfortable enough to say, oh, well, wear your mask. I'm like, okay, well, what is that really doing?
Right.
It's like, okay, I'm using this hand sanitizer, I've got to touch stuff. Like I had a little bit of anxiety. I'm like, man, I need to review my shipping process. Like I've got product that I've got to send out. I'm like, maybe I need to take in a couple more extra layers of security there. I've got packaging. But my packaging, I'm ordering the packaging from somewhere else.
Yeah.
I'm using the post office stuff. I'm packaging it up. I'm putting it in, can't put it in the post office boxes because those have disappeared, but then it's going through the post office. Okay. So even if I take all the precautions and packaging mine up, with the gloves and I'm spraying everything with the alcohol, and then it runs behind in the machine behind something that's done everything else, not to mention it's on the truck. So how is it, and you tell me, is this just a veiled security? Is it really real that we can protect ourselves from this thing? So
yeah,
I don't know. I don't know how safe we are. I mean, I don't want to, but that's a lot of anxiety.
Well, and it is, and I think it's levels of risk, and we just have not put any sort of criteria on. I've seen these charts, but it's like we really need, kind of red, yellow, green, right, or 1 through 10 level of what behaviors and what activities are high risk and low risk. So by the time you pack something up, right, you've made the soap, you've packed it up, and you've shipped it, right? Anything that would have come off of you, right, even if you sneeze directly on it, the virus, they know now, does not live very long on a surface. So even by the time the mailman picks it up, that's fine, right?
And then the mailman sneezes on it, and then
the mailman sneezes on it, and then so if another mailman touches it right away, maybe, right? So, like I say, your customer only needs to worry about who was the last person to touch it, right? Not who the first person to touch it, right? So if you're looking at where to spend your energy and effort, you don't need to. I mean, other than to say, but they call it what do they call it? Hygiene theater. Is that somehow it makes people feel better, right? Is if they say, you say, look what I'm doing, right? And I'm going to show you, I'm sanitizing all this before I send it out. That is absolutely not necessary, right? It's this thing of where they're closing the schools, right? So here in Georgia, we've had some schools open for almost 2 weeks now. And these schools had to close down just like that, just like University of North Carolina. They're open a week and suddenly they're having to close, right? And go back to virtual. And so what do they say? We've got, like one school system had I think it was, I don't know if it was Gwinnett or Cherokee, had 1,300 students and student, staff, teachers quarantined after 1 week because of exposures in the classroom. Now that's not cases. That's that there was a case in that they were exposed to. Well, if there's a teacher that has had 5 classes in a day, all those kids have to be quarantined, right? So, very quickly you end up with large numbers quarantined. So they got to a certain number. They said, we're going to close the schools down for a couple of days and we're going to sanitize everything. You know what? That stuff doesn't even live overnight. All you have to do is turn off the lights, right? You don't need to spend 2 days sanitizing the entire high school. That's not how you stop.
Wait, what do you mean? Turn off the lights?
Well, I'm just saying, just empty the building and go home and let it sit. Surfaces sit, and the stuff dies on surfaces. It doesn't stay on surfaces. It stays in the air, right? And it stays in the air, what they're saying now, about 20 minutes, right? So even if the air was full of coronavirus, right? If the building is empty, right, and the air is
Mhm.
running, it's gone by the morning. They don't need to sanitize. That's hygiene theater. What they need is better filtration systems, better ventilation, and everyone in a mask, and preferably everybody in a high quality mask. These people are catching coronavirus from air, from breathing each other's air. It's not from touching something. And so in
Mhm.
the school, it's not, they don't need to go in and spend whatever money and energy to Lysol an entire school. That doesn't help, but it's keeping the air clean, keeping the filtration going. Like they're not even allowed to leave the doors open to the classrooms because of because of active
Okay.
shooter. So their security systems don't work if the doors are open. So, like opening a door and a window would be a very easy thing to do to at least keep fresh air, but they
And
can't
they
even do
can't do
that
that
because
because
they're worried about a kid
shooters.
coming in with a gun, right? So it's like so again, it's theater. We're putting a lot of in, so people are
I like
tired and
that. I like
exhausted from
that.
all of
Mhm.
this. That's a performance around. I'm gonna wash and we're gonna scrub.
Mhm.
Nothing. Now washing your hands, yes, of course. But the problem is it's the air. It's you're
Mhm.
breathing it in the air and it lingers in the air. This is where the mask, right? Why wearing the mask and everybody wearing a mask works. Somebody coughs or sneezes in the air, and that virus is hovering in the air except for up to 20 minutes, and it can go way more than 6 feet. This whole 6 feet again is a performance, right?
Mhm.
And so now further it gets, the weaker it gets. So there's all these things about how much did you breathe in, da da da. But it's about breathing it in. Now, if you, like I say, if you went to the pin pad, like I went to the ATM. This was one of my little adventures. And sure enough, there was a person right in front of me, and I didn't have any gloves in the car. I usually had some gloves in the car. I didn't have any gloves in the car. I did hand sanitize, but
Mhm.
I had to touch that keypad after this woman, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna stand here for a couple of minutes.
And they
I
won't
was like,
let you watch keypad anymore.
no, no, and so I'm just like, okay, now, all right, here I'm gonna just be careful. As soon as I get in the car, hand sanitize. Now that is a risk situation. Like immediately behind somebody, touching something, right? But like if this pin pad sits for 20 minutes, it's probably fine. You don't even need to wipe it off, right? Because again, the virus doesn't live a long time on surfaces. There's a lot of debate
How
on
many
this, but
places have you gone and they said, okay, well, let's wait?
yeah.
I can't, we got to wait a few minutes. Like, that's what I want. And hopefully
Mm-hmm.
that's not more theater. It's like, okay, let's wait 5 minutes. You can't go
That's
directly after
No,
somebody,
that's good. That right there is smart, right?
Mm-hmm.
How long you're waiting, we don't really know, right? So does it need to be 20 minutes that you wait, right? But don't go right in behind somebody. That is the absolute. If you can avoid
Mm-hmm.
breathing somebody's air, right? And again, and this is where restaurants are so dangerous because when you are eating, right, and
Mm-hmm.
talking,
Mm-hmm.
you can't wear a mask and eat, and so it's and everybody is just spewing out
It's been a
particulate.
minute since we heard about a restaurant being a hotspot. We've heard, there's been a case and they closed down, but we haven't
well
heard
and
any true
and
hotspots lately.
and here is the problem. There's an article in the New Yorker, and anybody who follows my social media knows that I got all up in this story about a cluster of cases at an Atlanta private school called the Lovett School. And
Mm-hmm.
I basically live on the other side of the tracks from the Lovett School. There's the rich part, and I'm in we'll say the middle class part, right? So Lovett School is probably a 10-minute drive from me, right? And so and in fact, the Lovett School is directly across the road from Tyler Perry's original Atlanta mansion, right? And so it's on the Chattahoochee River in this Vinings area, which is to northwest Atlanta. And so they had an outbreak of students who had graduated, and it turns out they had been having graduation parties, and there had been multiple graduation parties. They felt like there were at least 80 cases related to these graduation parties,
Mm.
that then they had a cluster, they had an outbreak in 2 zip codes adjacent to the Lovett School. And so the thought being these kids were going home, they were mostly from wealthy families.
I
Families were
think they
getting,
even attempted a graduation too, right?
yes, and they did a graduation, and they immediately said, well, it wasn't the graduation, it was that these kids were sneaking off and having parties. I think the parents were having the parties. I think the parents were supporting the parties. But what they ran into, and again, this is now in the New Yorker, they've done a big investigation on it, is that the parents actively resisted contact tracing and admitting who their kids had been around, who they had been around. They refused to participate, right? So if let's say that there's a restaurant you go to and an employee has COVID, there is no requirement that anybody be informed, including the employer. HIPAA says you don't have to tell anybody your medical information. And then if the employer knows that an employee was sick, they can say, well, HIPAA says I can't reveal it. Now, HIPAA doesn't say that you can't say that there was a case here. You just can't say the name of the person, right? But this means that you can be on a job and one of your fellow workers is sick and gets with COVID, and your employer can't necessarily tell you, right? Or they won't, or they'll use that as an excuse not to tell you. Because I'm like, why
and
are
they
we
don't tell. They don't tell. They just
how
say
are
an
these
employee in certain departments.
exactly? So sometimes they're not even revealing at locations that someone has had COVID. And I know of a case that's out of state, in a service industry. I'll be very vague because the person who told me this, in a service industry location where people come and go all day, where there were multiple COVID positives in the staff, and they didn't tell anybody. They didn't tell the staff. They didn't tell the other staff. They weren't telling the employees. They didn't close even for a day, right? And it finally leaked out. Somebody told somebody, and that there had been multiple employees that that just took some days off, right? That ended up. So I mean, this was a facility that was seeing probably hundreds of people in a week, right? But even the employees weren't warned that someone that multiple people they worked with had COVID, that they had COVID exposures. And the whole thing, they said, well, HIPAA, we can't say. No, but there's really no enforcement on this of saying if your facility has has cases, you've got to do something. So this is where I go back to you, Yolanda. This is you've taught me to think this way, is to say that we're missing data points, right? When I did my little drive around, I used to belong to LA Fitness. I dropped my membership with the pandemic. It was a very, very popular location, always full. I drove over there about 2:00 in the afternoon on Monday, and it looked like a slow day, but it was absolutely full, right? The parking lot was full. And I thought, how can we not be having COVID cases, right? So it may not be that we're finding out that LA Fitness was a hotspot because people aren't reporting and they're not doing contact tracing, and you're not required, right? So people aren't admitting where they went, and they're not saying where they went. So again, this is back to a sort of an inherent, I mean, it goes back to the individualism of people in this country, saying, well, I have a right to my privacy, and I believe in the right to privacy, but there is a public good that again is just you saying, I was at LA Fitness from 2 to 4 on this day, and they can look and see everybody who swiped in, right? And send them a notification that says you may have been exposed to COVID. It's that easy, but people don't want to do it. And until we have the contact tracing element, right? Where, like you say, so that we can tell people that, that there was some cases at this gym or whatever, we're not going to know where these are coming from. Because this is my absolute
I didn't think that was going to work anyway, because when you think about it, I like that the one of the guys said, we've had pandemics before. In fact, I don't know who I was watching. The last pandemic was AIDS thing. And I think because when we talk about tracing, we talk about notifying, like you said, the HIPAA laws, because we've got one set of laws already in place, it's not going to allow for us to really know what's going on around us. And we're just not there where people are going to be willing to just give up that kind of information, where you can literally be able to identify what a person has all around you. That's giving too much of what people consider to be their normal freedom. So
exactly. And so we don't know. So how do we know? So because I keep thinking, okay, so Georgia has the highest rate of spread. Where the hell is it getting spread? We should be
Right.
able to know, right? If we're getting all these cases and all these people, why don't we just? We're supposed to be asking them where they've been.
We
right?
hear the numbers. It's like, okay, so what type of building are you in?
Right.
There's no deep dive
But
on
if
any
it's
kind of
been,
data.
but like to your point, if you've been to a restaurant, to a different restaurant every night, and you've been
Mhm.
to the gym, and you went and got your hair done, and and then I went to a little gathering over at somebody's house, right?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
then I went shopping at the mall. There's no way to know
You've
where
been
that came from.
everywhere that everybody you've been around has been.
Yes, and so
For
the
whether you've
current
been anywhere or not, you
the
encounter somebody, you've been everywhere they've been.
Yeah, so the current statistics, and this is my statistics are a couple. This is data you would enjoy. My data is a couple of weeks old, but so it would be a greater number than this. But that basically, in Georgia, in the metro area, if you're in a group of 100 people, the prediction is that you have that at least one of those people has active COVID. And I believe that the number that I last saw was it was like 83. That around every 83 people, there's one active COVID case. So if you've been into a place where there's either 100 people there at the same time or 100 people have gone through in a day, right?
Mhm.
You will have crossed paths with at least one COVID
Right.
positive
That
person.
sounds like the spreadsheet that my son is tracking it and
I
sent to
was
me.
thinking about
Remember,
your son.
I think at that
Yes.
time it was like 113.
Yeah.
Because
So
when he gave me this big number, I was like, "No, drill that down for me." How many? He says about one. It was about a 1 in
yeah,
113 at the time.
and that's
For Georgia.
Yep. So that
Hmm.
number is getting smaller and smaller and smaller.
Hmm.
And
But of course,
so
around the world, when you start comparing this, and that's the thing too, is like you've got to compare us to some of these other places when you look at what they're doing, and there are places where the number it's almost not as much of a concern as it is
mm-hmm,
here, because they did a proper shutdown, they did a proper
mm-hmm.
reopening, and they're just, other places are just so far more advanced than we are, simply because of the people that we have currently in charge. And I don't know if to even tell you that voting is going to change that,
Yeah.
or at what level of voting will change that, because it really is about each of us, individuals, and role that we each play in this. No matter what's going on in the White House, no matter what's going on with the governor, the mayor, who we haven't seen our mayor in a minute.
I'm like,
She wasn't selected and
no,
fell
and
out
now
of the
she's
news
well, you know
cycle.
what though? She's doing something at the convention. She was in charge of something and it was a behind the scenes thing. So she may be just busy this
She was
week.
also speaking, right? Wasn't she on there to speak as well?
I don't know if
I
she's
think
speaking.
I
Um,
think she's on the day to close it out. I think she's on
Yeah,
the
so
close out day.
I would be surprised if she wasn't, but
Yeah, she's
I
on
know
there.
she's involved. She was a chair. I think she's the chair of some sort of committee. So probably been busy the last couple of weeks.
Yeah,
But I will say, and we were going to pop over to Instagram. Our time we're way
yeah,
past time,
we're past
but
time,
I
so
guess we're
we
going to
won't do
wrap.
that today.
But I do
Yeah.
want to point out to people, you can watch if you go to the DNC's channel. Um, you can watch live streams of all their caucuses, which is very
Mm-hmm.
interesting. I watched a couple of them. So you can watch the Black Caucus, the Women's Caucus. I just had it on. It was the Interfaith Caucus, and it was just about
Mm-hmm.
religious people talking. I was like, well, this is interesting. LGBTQ, there's, Latino, there's on and
Mm-hmm.
on and on.
Because
Just
it
every,
comes down, a person votes by how they
yeah.
identify,
And so
and you'd
if
be
you want to
surprised.
hear, now some of it still felt like the pep rally, we got to vote for Joe Biden. So like
Mm-hmm.
the actual, there's some policy stuff that's going to stream if you want to see conversations about policy decisions, right? And this would be the sort of stuff that you would never have access to unless you were actually at the
At the
convention.
convention,
And
right?
in fact, you wouldn't be able to go, if you were in one caucus, you wouldn't be able to go to the other one that was happening at the same time, but they're all
Mm-hmm.
recorded. So it's live streams when they're live, and then there's recordings. So, if you're
Mm.
interested in sort of who's in the party, who's, what's happening on, like, I thought this is where Barack Obama came from. He was a community
And there
organizer.
is, for those of you who don't know, there is a hip hop caucus. There is a hip
Yes.
hop is old enough
And
to be elected, and so there is a hip hop caucus. So
in
definitely
fact, I
a good.
watched, and there's adjacent then kind of meetings, and I watched one called Just Us, JUSTUS, Just Us DNC, that was about prison reform. And they had a fantastic interview. I just saw somebody on Twitter going, "Go look at this right now." It was Michael K. Williams, who was in The Wire. He was in, the Ava DuVernay, the Exonerated Five, When They See Us. And so Michael K. Williams and Dwayne Betts, who's a poet and activist who had been in prison and is now a lawyer and is, gets people out of jail. And that conversation was incredible. It was just a really personal. They both just got real personal and really real, and basically addressing what their personal approaches were. And so when it got down to this question of voting, right? So you're like, well, the question was, well, what do these politicians need to do? And it was a very hard question to be answered, right? And it was Michael K. Williams who said, they need to come and talk to young people and leave the cameras and leave all of that behind and just listen. They said, if you can get young people to talk to you, you've got to listen to them.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And that's always been a large part of advocacy, listening, because everybody wants to come and talk and deliver a message, but it's really about listening.
And then what they talked about that they were doing individually were not government initiatives, right? They were initiatives with their own companies and with their own projects to hire formerly incarcerated and to mentor youth and so forth. And I thought, this is so yeah, of course we're going to vote. We got to vote. But I think we are reaching a point where there is a dissatisfaction with what the elected officials are actually doing once they get into office. So yeah, you can vote, but are they actually doing on the ground thing? And what I thought this, like I said, I didn't watch the whole thing, but here are people talking about, here is what our experience is in neighborhoods with these various issues. Michael K. Williams suffered from drug addiction. He recovered. What do jobs look like? What do communities look like? How do we work together? I thought, this is what they're talking about, what needs to be done. And I think what we're seeing is a tremendous disparity between the people in office and actually what needs to be done. So, I'm like, I think that this is why people got dissatisfied with voting. And the problem is, if you don't vote, you end up with a Trump, right? But even if Biden and Harris get in the office, to your point, what are they even able to do, right, within that system? So
when you say if you don't vote, you end up with a Trump, I think that's the message that's going to have to change, because people did vote.
It's true. You're right.
They did vote. They voted in the number which they should.
You're exactly
there are
right.
other things that we need to be concerned about. So,
and honestly, as I said it, I thought I don't really even agree with myself. Counterpoint. I think that's in fact a wrong message, because people did vote.
I think
and people were
in the system again.
And people were disenfranchised at the polls. And this, I thought, I get that the Democrats are like, vote, vote, vote. But it's like, how about if you address the fact that people either went and voted and their vote and the system was rigged, right? In the sense that you can win the Electoral College without winning the popular vote, which has happened twice in our lifetime.
The concern there, I know, and I always think about this when I think about the Electoral College. When I think about the delegates, and we had the roll call last night. You hear some states, have such a high number, and some states have a lower number. Yeah. Those are the things that are impacting us. Like, why we and I don't know if there's ever a time to address it where it'll actually be, in the favor of the people, because it's a system that needs to change, because it's just not right. It's like it discourages you from participating in the system when you really look at how the system works. So you mean, okay, if everybody in my household goes and vote, and then my state gets canceled out because our representation is what it is.
Absolutely.
If you really look at it, you can't really tell if you play a part in the process or not, especially when you think, oh, well, the candidates, they no longer come to my state. It's like it's set up for disenfranchisement.
Well, it is, and the Electoral College was designed to counter the enslaved population of the new United States. So the Electoral College is inherently racist to begin with. So there's no way that is, again, it's in the DNA of it. So, you know,
America.
it's like, it is America and states' rights. We're still talking about states' rights. And it's just like so stupid. But anyway, the point is that, you know, I appreciate when Michelle Obama said, you better put on your comfy shoes, you know, get your mask, pack your lunch and your breakfast.
Can
And I
I
was
tell you
like,
the funniest
but
thing for me
yeah, go ahead.
is watching Biden. He is so quick to put that mask on. When he's not talking, he is so quick. And the way he carries it, he is so quick to grab that mask. If nobody else around him, like when he's done, boom, boom, he puts that thing on so fast. And it was funny how when Barack Obama was here for John Lewis's memorial, how the cameras were following him when he left the podium, and he stopped. He went in that pocket right quick and put that mask on, honey. I'm telling you. They make everything cool. They make everything
well,
cool.
it's true. Anything Barack Obama touches is cool. But yeah, Biden's like, I'm old, you know, and I want to be president. I want to live to be president. And but you know, it's and I know you're gonna go. I gotta go. One of the things they're saying
I will tell you this. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say one of the things that we have absolutely backward is that the speakers need to be in masks because as they speak. Like you think about Keisha in that room, they're speaking it out. So I heard a thing that said, if you look at John Lewis's funeral, it was absolutely backwards. That the speakers who were speaking out into an audience of a lot of old people, right? So they needed to have a mask or something that would have,
because they could be hurt. They could be
hurt. Or they could have had, you know, like a plexiglass or something that would have captured someone. So they're the ones that are dangerous. They're not the ones in danger.
Because you and I talked about that. We talked about that because there were 3 memorials, and we talked about it. We've been talking about it literally from George Floyd. You know, all the people that went to the George Floyd memorial and were not wearing masks. Some were, some weren't. And then of course the CT Vivian, which a lot of people didn't go, was more virtual. And then we were wondering how people were going to show up for the mini services for John Lewis. And then there's a lot that needs to be done. But again, you know, we don't want it to be, as you said, to your point, theater. We really want to know what is the true protection behind this thing,
because the theater wears you out. Right. So when you're scrubbing your groceries when you don't need to, right? Now, again, you let them sit for a minute. You're probably fine.
Exactly
you're scrubbing your groceries, right? And you're you know, like the movie theaters, like we're going to sanitize every day. It's not sanitizing. It's sitting next to somebody who's going, and that's how you get it, right? So I mean, it's like, it wears you out.
What if somebody invents a theater and you're sitting in your chair and you put on one of those glass helmets like those?
Yes, I love it.
I'm like, go ahead and make this futuristic theater. Protect me because I really want to go. And
people would, and you just go into your little.
And even when the arenas are starting to open up, they're changing up the capacity so people aren't sitting right next to you and right on you. Which I'm so ecstatic about that because I really want to go to a baseball game, and now I can't wait to be able to sit somewhere and not have to be in that crowd.
I think about like the Brave Stadium, right, which is open air. If they had people properly spaced, you could go do that. You know, there's things again there's things that we should have open that we don't, and things that shouldn't be open that are open. So again, we've just got it so backward. And so, you know, like when I went over to the Brave Stadium, I did have my mask with me and I had it on for part of the, you know, if I was near anybody, but there were, you know, nobody else had a mask on, and I didn't judge them because it's open air, right? I'm not worried about if you're walking around at Truist Park, you don't need the mask. It's when you go inside that you need the mask, right? And so, you know, a lot of places where they have mask mandates, they mandate people to wear a mask walking down the street. That's not really where they need the mask. They need the mask when they walk inside, right? So again, we can't even get that part right. So if you're making people walk around in masks outside when they don't need them, that makes them not want to wear a mask. Instead of saying, here's when you need to put the mask on, right? If you're in a crowd outside, put your mask on, right?
Yeah.
So
anyway, well, you know, we went as a family, went to Stone Mountain. And luckily, you know, it wasn't like their regular major crowds. We did take the tram up to the top of the mountain. but they had it limited to like maybe about 10 people on the tram. And I didn't realize how big that thing was. And they grouped you off based on your travel group. It said, you know, in everywhere, like we were going to stand somewhere you had to stand, it said one travel group or family per, you know, thing. Like if one family was over there, like don't go over there.
Right.
And when we got on the tram to go up to the top of the mountain, it was sectioned off in it had 4 sections. And they would say, okay, your group go to section 1. So you were separated in the car and kind of along the rim, and you were like diagonally away from each other, but within your group. And if you were, you know, there were a couple people that were alone, they had places for them. But everywhere we went, there were these rules as to don't intermingle. You know, if you came together, then y'all are fine.
Right.
But y'all got to stay together, and you can't go running off and, you know, doing all this stuff. You must do. You had to do everything kind of as a group, but it wasn't like major crowds. And even when we were standing in the line for the tram, you know, everybody had kind of the distance, you know, and so forth, and the mask. And then when we got ready to get on, they had a station. They said, okay, make sure your mask is on. Use the sanitizer. They had us sanitize our hands and things like that, so we wouldn't be touching, you know, everything. And then, and I thought that was handled pretty well, and that made me wanted to go and explore some other things. Like, you know, I think I might go to Six Flags, you know. But again, it's the onus is on the people as an individual, and the problems that we have had and have seen is those who just want to be out with no rules. I'm sorry, we don't live in that society anymore.
No,
we don't live in that society anymore.
No.
I shared a TikTok where this guy said he was watching the documentary about Mount St. Helen.
I saw that.
Where the lady was like, I pay my taxes and I should be able to use the road. And they were like, well, ma'am, the volcano, you know, could blow at any moment. She was like, but I pay my taxes. And like, is that going to protect you if the volcano not going to blow because you pay your taxes? It's like, come on. So we've always, like I said, we've been here before, time and time again. And we just need to, let's just not ignore the fact that we have some of these histories that we can truly learn from. And even going through this, you know, as soon as this hit us, there were those who went back and said, hey, listen, we've been there. You know, we've been here before. There are things that we need to do. And I'm still trying to identify with where we were in the crunch of things. And we saw the high number of deaths and the urgency in the hospitals. And we're wondering now, okay, like, where did all that go? Somebody was saying, okay, where did this go? And are we better because we're not seeing that? And like you said, theater, I'm like, are they just not showing it?
Yeah.
To make us a little bit more comfortable with the thing, you know? Should we still have some of those same concerns? We just need to govern ourselves.
Exactly.
Can America become the country that individuals begin to govern themselves? We're known around the world because we are that country where people won't govern themselves. Nowhere else do you hear of the government having to be so involved in the daily lives of people. You don't hear that anywhere. It's not known anywhere else. Besides, which is why we are the country that we lead the world in putting people in jail and in prison, because we are that country where Americans won't govern themselves accordingly. We're always trying to impede on somebody else's progress, somebody else's happiness, somebody else's life. You know, we are, that's what it is to be American, and it needs to stop. It needs to stop. And we need to stop because Angela's got to go.
I'm way past time, and I gotta go. I got somebody waiting for me. But yes, but you know what?
I think we just had our after talk. Go ahead.
I want to say you've left me with my leading words of wisdom is going to be, don't be Karen versus the volcano. I'm like, Karen versus the volcano.
Like, girl, it's a volcano.
It's just like, I just dawned on me. I'm like, it's Karen versus the volcano. And guess who wins every time, Karen? The volcano. So, you know, it's like,
back in the day, I mean, did it ever blow? It did blow, didn't it?
It did. And people died because they wouldn't get off the mountain.
Get up.
People died. Now, I don't think that lady died.
I tell our young people, y'all don't know what we have lived through. We have lived through seeing some stuff.
Some
Oh my!
stuff. We have. We have
She
seen so
was.
many things blow up.
She's like,
We've seen so
Texas, I should be able to be on my property. Okay. And the volcano is going to.
it's going to erupt, and it did, and people wouldn't leave their houses, and people
Wasn't there
died.
a former president up there too? Wasn't there a movie back in the day? Who was it? Truman or somebody back in the day? Am I confusing?
I don't.
Uh,
I'm not sure.
the third kind. What was that other one? There was something where one of the guys. There's an older movie. I don't know if it was like one of the fires or something where one of the former presidents had, because I remember he had an older car and was trying to go up the mountain as well, or lived up the mountain, and something one of those traumatic things was happening, and they were trying to, and they realized that was him. He was living off the grid kind of thing.
Wow.
Yeah, I just remember that. So, but anyway, all righty, ma'am. We checked in, y'all. We will check in again with you guys next Wednesday. Don't look for us on Sunday. Yep. We are now going back. That's family day again, family time again. Angela is venturing out. I'm going to try and venture out myself. Lots and lots going on. Lots and lots for us to tell you guys. Don't forget, finish up the cast so Angela can give us our next book. I think next time we come on, we'll be at the end of the month.
Yeah, so we'll pick a book next week, and and certainly next, hopefully we can be done and we'll recap it, and and we'll have a book for the kickoff for then our Leading Women prime time on the first Wednesday.
Was that an
September.
author that Michelle Obama, her latest interview? Was she an author? She just recently posted her latest episode.
I didn't see the latest one, so
and let me see. I can. Oh, it says it's trying to come up. Okay, wait. Let me see if I can get it. No, it's just protest. But she just shared somebody. Oh, it did. Wait, it jumped. It said award-winning author, but it jumped. So, Growing Up Robinson. Oh, I gotta go catch up on Michelle Obama's things. I don't see
same
it.
here.
I don't see it. It jumped, so I don't see it.
There's a couple of things on my radar, and we'll see what's on your radar that are interesting. Because I loved Memorial Drive. That's a good read, although that's a hard read.
I've got that.
But I loved it. It's beautiful. There's
it's only a couple hours to listen to it. And that's probably your second alarm going off.
I gotta go.
That's the second one, right? All right, you guys. Look, I'm about to get out the chair without turning the thing off. All right, y'all. Have a good one. Bye.